Did I not bring my water bottle in here? No, I did not. What a shame. All that prep, and I didn't bring it in. Oh well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. Back for our 8 p.m. Tropics talk. I'm hyped up. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. But here we are. Getting ready to kick things off. We'll let a few more people join in, and then we'll get to talking. Because we don't have a lot to talk about tonight, but we have enough to talk about. Good evening. I watch you on Mike's weather page. Thank you guys for always updating us. How likely of a system forming in the Caribbean? Doff Boy, great question. We're definitely going to get into that. That's one of the big things I want to talk about. Everyone is still hyper-focused on Philippe for a good reason, and future Rina. Some folks have been mentioning a future Sean, but we're not quite there yet. We haven't had our R-Storm just yet. Ethan's Life, good to see you. Who else we got in here? Let's everybody start saying hello. Let's get the chat going. Let's try not to hype it up too much. It's not Friday yet. We got to wait for Friday's episode. Miss Laia, good to see you. Miss Leia, good to see you. Zenful, great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll give it a little bit longer. I don't know why I'm saying we'll give it a little bit longer. It's 8:01. We still have time. Some interesting up-and-comings with Tropical Storm Philippe, though. First and foremost, if you were to go back in time and ask David Friday, Saturday of last week if Philippe would be a threat for the Caribbean, I would have been like, nope, we're looking pretty good. And yet now look at what we've got on National Hurricane Center. And it's strengthened a little bit today, too, which is interesting. Robert, hello. Christine, good to see you. Boss Lady Mama, thank you for doing daily tropic updates. Hi from Central Florida. Neighbor, hello. Event, hi there. Carmen, great to see you. Matthew, what's up? What's going on, guys? Good to see everybody. We have some pretty interesting stuff to talk about tonight, especially if we go back in time to that hypothetical scenario. What's funny, and I realize this every time I say it, but you can't say hypothetical without hype. El Dugout, hello from Puerto Rico. Trujillo Alto, thanks for your time. El Dugout, pleasure to have you in here. We're watching out for you guys out there. I have family and relatives, extended relatives out there in Puerto Rico, and I'm definitely watching Philippe closely because regardless of what happens right now, looking at National Hurricane Center, they have it headed straight in. So, I mean, whether it's a depression or a possible tropical storm still, like there's a lot of up in the air with this. It's been breaking rules just like Idalia did earlier this year. Philippe's kind of doing its own thing. So yeah, Philippe has gone up a little bit. He was hanging out at 45 miles an hour. He's back up to 50 miles an hour, and his forward progress has slowed. Him and Disturbance 91L behind him are going to do a little devil's dance, if you will. They're going to kind of float around a little bit and do something. It's going to be very interesting. In fact, it's crazy because the GFS now wants Philippe to slow down and almost stop and then move north and be the one that really deepens down into a big system while 91L kind of just disappears. And it almost looks like NHC's picking up on this as well because that's weird. They have their little formation cone here pointing northwest, which is definitely different than what all the models were talking about or what all the models are pointing out. And they're still at 90-90 for both. 90-90 for both. And then, yeah, Philippe has strengthened just a little bit. 998 millibars, so down 5 millibars in the last 24 hours. Not crazy intensification, but a lot of folks were already counting him out of the fight. In fact, a lot of videos just this morning released saying that he was weakening, and he actually did the opposite, albeit only 5 miles an hour, but still. Super Charas, good to see you. Wilhelm, hi. Ethan's Life, interest to see the CMC forecast. Yep, CMC looks a little bizarre today, but we're going to get into that here in a moment. Carmen, it's always a pleasure to see you in here, for sure. Been watching, appreciate it. I'm glad, El Dugout, you've been watching it. Forgive me, I'm not throwing the Spanish accent in there, so you just got to bear with my gringuito for a little bit. But yeah, definitely keeping a close eye out. There's definitely a few areas that we really need to be watching what's happening in the tropics. Depending on what 91L decides to do, I'm noticing some trends that are actually taking it a lot closer to Bermuda now. And I know on a couple of instances, we've had some viewers from Bermuda in here in the Tropics Talk and watching my videos. So I can't rule you guys out. We're definitely watching out for you. The Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, and then headed towards Dominican Republic. We're watching you guys closely as well because the track takes it right in. So there's no hype involved in that. You can't argue with the projected path. I know you can probably say, I just got a depression, but I mean, still, a depression, regardless, is still taking a landfall from something. So it goes without saying, we have things to watch for. And this has been the big thing for me today. This has definitely been what I've been very focused on. Not even so much the Canadian model per se, but just the fact that Climate Prediction Center came out with an updated chart, and I'm not going to lie, I had a feeling they would backpedal in their taken off and putting the brown on there as opposed to the red, but I'm also very curious as to why that they've come back to a 20% chance in the West Caribbean and the Southern Gulf, and they have some tropical cyclone potential off of the southeast coastline again. And this is into October. Maybe we can pull up the discussion here in a little bit and see what they're writing about. Robert, absolutely. It looks like there could be a Fujiwara effect going on between 91 and Philippe. Now it's just a matter of who's going to win the duel, or the dancing duel, or however you want to call it, the square dancing between the two of them. It looked like it's going to hit Cuba. Which one? 91, Philippe, or our potential future hypothetical cyclone on the horizon? But yeah, this has been something I've been very focused on. When I saw this on Mike's weather page earlier, I had to jump right into CPC. I mean, I check it usually every other day. I'll be honest, I don't monitor the repetition at which they put these out. But interesting to say that they've brought back the cyclone probabilities for almost all of October. That puts us right through. Could you guys imagine if we get a Friday the 13th storm? Because I mean, we have the favorability out there between October 11th, the 13th, and all the way through to the 17th. And even before that, we're looking at something forming up. But here's the Canadian model. We'll go through the last couple of runs because it's done some very interesting things, and we'll have to see what 0Z shows tonight. But this was 0Z earlier this morning, and you can see right off the coastline of, I believe that's Costa Rica. I always get those dorked up, and I did so much forecasting for Central America. But right in through here, right off the coast of Nicaragua, Costa Rica, you get that low coming off and trying to move to the north and deepen down pretty quickly, 998, and then you have another cyclone back behind it. This I absolutely do believe. I definitely believe we could see dual cyclones on either side of it. It was proven earlier in August that's exactly what was happening. We had multiple cyclones in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, or I should say the Caribbean AOR. What's the 5 p.m. Euro run look like? Well, let's take a look here in a second. But what's interesting here is if you guys look, we have a really nice buzzsaw appearance with this storm headed due north, like so. But then you fast forward to where we are at 12Z, and it completely changes its song and dance. This one has it much weaker. It comes off of the coast of Costa Rica and then skyrockets off to the west-northwest over the Yucatan. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as you go forward in time, once this frontal system back up in through here can work its way down to the south and east, if the Canadian model wants to do something like this and drive it up towards Texas, Louisiana. This I don't have a lot of faith in, to tell you the truth. I really don't. And I pointed that out in my video earlier today. The ensembles for the Canadian don't really have it moving west. The one deterministic run did, which is very interesting. But, I mean, that's to be expected. This is exactly what happened with Idalia. It was bouncing all over the place, and you really couldn't get a good idea of where, if and when it was going to form and how it was going to track until it had finally formed. I've been waiting for my first Fujiwara effect, hurricane plus hurricane. Yeah, if you look out here, as a matter of fact, we'll expand this AOI a little bit, and even the Canadian model shows that kind of happening. You can see that they get in close proximity of one another. You know what's interesting? Is, come to think of it, NHC is following what the Canadian model is predicting. Let me go over to GFS real quick and see if they're thinking the same thing. I don't believe it is. GFS is doing something wonky with those two systems out there, albeit still reminiscent of Fujiwara. So yeah, there it tracks off, and then it gets sucked into Philippe, and you can actually see this is a textbook Fujiwara effect right here. A dance of two storms. Because if you watch, you get both of them starting to deepen down, and then they both stop. They both stop what they're doing, and they dance around one another until finally the weaker system gets absorbed into Philippe, and then the GFS actually wants to eject it out into open water, harming nobody, not even going into Puerto Rico and everything. So that would be crazy to see if that unfolds, because that would definitely change what National Hurricane Center is predicting right now, 150%. Let's go over to the Euro model. I know some folks have mentioned that. Euro has, I think, a much simpler solution. You have Philippe undergoing cyclolysis, or I should say dissipating over Puerto Rico, becoming nothing more than a rainmaker. Rina tries to come in for a close scrape and then skyrocket out into the Atlantic, but take a look at how it's going straight towards Bermuda. Bermuda's right here, and it's headed north-northwest straight in that general direction as a weaker storm. And yeah, PM, good to see you. I was going to mention, if you came in tonight, we were definitely getting dumped on over here. You could even hear it over the TV playing. It was pouring outside a little bit ago. Why is slow mode 1 minute? I don't know. Let me go ahead and adjust that real quick. I made sure to put slow mode on, to tell you the truth, because some people be spamming the, whatchamacallit. Let me see, where is it? We'll go 30 seconds. Some people spam the comments, and they do the classic copy and paste. Fujiwara is so rare in the Atlantic, it happens more in the Pacific. I agree, Anthony. It's been downpouring hard in Osceola County tonight. Yes, it has, definitely. There's a lot of showers and storms out there once again. But this is a 5 p.m. Euro, or the 12Z Euro, I should say. And one detail that a lot of people have missed that I've been watching across YouTube, and this is more or less just a how goes it fact. It's nothing crazy or anything, groundbreaking that's going to affect the storms. I mean, it does, but it's just worth pointing out. But a lot of folks have been mentioning that the high pressure and the high pressure and the high pressure, but really what's happening with both of these systems is, yes, we do have a high out there, but if you look at where it is, that's really not going to play a huge role in where these systems track. They should still be able to shoot up to the north in this weakness provided by our frontal system out here. The real reason, number one, these systems are tracking further to the west is because they're taking their sweet time to develop. So please don't be misled if you come across videos of rapid intensification and quickly intensifying and forming on up and whatnot, because it's really not. Both of these storms out there in the Atlantic have been taking their sweet time to develop. I feel like we've had 97. I feel like we've had 91L, I was going to say, for 7 some odd days. 91L out there for about 5 to 7 days now since the weekend. We've had an elevated chance of development in the next 48 hours, and it still hasn't done anything. So what's happening is, as these systems begin to spin, they begin to fight against traditional inertia. They begin to They begin to fight against the Coriolis force, and they begin to develop their own conservation of angular momentum. And that's why they say slower west, faster north. Well, I should say stronger north, but the real reason is faster. It's like when you spin around in your office chair. If you have your arms out like this, you're going to spin much slower, and you're only going to, change direction ever so slightly. But if you pull your hands in like a figure skater and you start spinning faster and faster, notice how it's much harder to control where they go, and they tend to move at a different angle at a much faster rate. It's the same thing with these systems. The way that they spin, because we're in the northern hemisphere, coupled with the curvature of the Earth and that angular momentum that they develop, that's what stops them or helps them move to the north. So if you ever hear that saying in other people's videos, stronger north, weaker west, that's one of the reasons why. Not the only reason, but one of them. And I know a lot of people have been mentioning that, but that's where physics comes into the play with these storm systems. It's pretty neat when you put the little fun facts together. But let's dial it back real quick. We'll go Canadian ensembles. Look at that. That's where I ended my video earlier, for those of you who are watching right now. Dang, I really wish I hadn't left my water bottle out in the living room. I might have to run and go get that in a second, guys, because my throat's already starting to bother me. But that's a lot of low pressure, and what's crazy about that is, especially given the fact that CPC is seeing something, I don't exactly discount that altogether. But let's go back in time, and this is precisely why I believe that we're going to, let me see, the moon is so bright tonight, Miss Anonymous. Is it really? I haven't stepped outside. Idalia is coming again. Wilhelm, imagine. Idalia re-strengthened over the Caribbean. She did a full circle and snuck under the radar. That energy's just been floating around.
No rain in Bradenton, just clouds. What a shame. You're an entertaining young man, Mike. I appreciate that, I think. Superchara's damn. Yikes, no fear, but we'll have to see. Yeah, I agree, definitely. But anyways, guys, this is why I think that operational model is going to change quite a bit, because consistently with the Canadian ensembles, if you look, we're getting closer and closer. It is the first week of October. There goes one of our storms, I'll say, because we don't know which one is going to be which. You see some action starting to fire off in Eastern Pacific, and then right about at the 4th to 5th of October, you finally start to see that lower pressure come off of Central America, and the general trend with every ensemble member with the Canadian is tracking it up and through here. None of them, like, either this way or this way. None of them want to take it off. I'll use a different color so you don't get confused, but none of them take it off in that direction. That's what our operational run was doing today, going like this. Every single ensemble member, as you track it through time, take it right through Cuba into the Bahamas, and some of them have a southwestern Florida landfall. Dare I say that? I know that's no one wants to hear that, but yeah, no. That's the general trend. I mean, you could make a case that maybe there's a couple of them over here in the Bay of Campeche, but the general consensus is about 75 to 85% of the agreement is up to the north and the northeast, which makes a lot of sense with the way our frontal system's been coming down off the United States recently. And then you go through time and you get another surge of really potent activity out of the southern Caribbean, and it just spreads north like crazy. So, I mean, I don't know. For a while now, the Canadian model had been popping up. You're right up with Ryan Hall, y'all. You're much better, Mike. Thank you. Wow, I genuinely appreciate that. That means a lot. Look at that. That made my night. But the one thing I want to take away from this is not necessarily that the ensembles are pinging on something and where it's going. It's the fact that the Canadian model for the last week and a half now, if you guys have been consistently watching my Tropics talks, we've been talking Tropics talks, talking Tropics for the last couple weeks, and I've mentioned every now and again that we've discussed, Canadian ensembles and GFS kind of highlighting things. And for a while now, the Canadian was highlighting a batch, just one particular rush of energy. And to see two segments now where we get one thing forming up possibly and then another round, that, dare I say it, is concerning. It's a little concerning because for the longest time it was consistently showing one area where we could see a flare-up, and now it's popping in two different times. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a couple of hints on the Euro model earlier today of something trying to pop out of there. Just a couple of hints. We're not talking major agreement, but I'm noticing that it's starting to slowly try to hike things up out there. Notice I said hike, not hype. But yeah, you go through time, and I'm going to draw a little grid box. If you watch out over this whole area where CPC has things highlighted, you start to see that? You start seeing members coming together. Not a lot of them, but you see enough out there. And look at that. There's even one random member of the Euro that has a major hurricane forming out there in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, naturally, don't take that with a whole lot of confidence, but all I'm saying is ensembles typically do this long range. They typically do a lot better than our deterministic models. That's what our ensembles are for. And ensembles will always win the game in terms of development. Until you have until you have an actual system out there, you don't want to use your deterministic models 100% of the time. That's why in a lot of my videos, if you notice, guys, my tempo is, if you watch my videos, if we're talking like an invest area or a wave or something in the future, I always go to ensembles first until I start to see our deterministic models picking up on it. And then I'll go back to ensembles, because since we don't have anything official yet, yes, our deterministic or our main runs are calling for something now, but the ensembles are still going to win in terms of accuracy that far out into the future. If this was happening 3 to 5 days from now, then yeah, you'd want to use our operational runs a little bit more. But right now, we're still using ensembles. And Canadian ensembles are lit up like the 4th of July 2 times in a row. We have a little bit of agreement going on in the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean with the Euro, as a matter of fact now. Let's go to GFS and see. I haven't looked at GFS. It's been a very busy day for me, so let's go and see what GFS has out there. We'll look at 12 Zulu. Let's see if it has anything going on. So there go our two systems. And then, yeah, a little bit of agreement. Very late in the run. That's outside of our realm of possibility. What's ironic is actually GFS has a little bit of agreement in the Caribbean and in the Gulf, and it actually has even more agreement out in the form of another Cape Verde system. Right around, dare I say it, Friday the 13th. It's kind of cool. Now, I will admit, I'm throwing a little hype in there just because, I'm a big Friday the 13th fan. I've shown you guys my collection and all that. That's the only reason I'm hyping that up. But interesting to see, it's got a little something out there in the main development region that late into October, the 13th, Friday the 13th. And then what's really going to be interesting is having to watch what happens off the coast, because I'm noticing some people are, in fact, talking about this entity up here, just off the mid-Atlantic coastline right there. And a lot of our members want to bring it back towards Florida, as whether it be just a disorganized cluster of showers, but you can see even on the GFS ensembles, and I believe it was there on the Euro, that something wants to try to get its act going. Let's see, we'll cross-reference one more time, and yeah, there you go. I mean, a little bit more discombobulated on the Euro, but there's still some members taking it towards the southeast, some of them being a little more aggressive than others, but, time will tell. And there's a couple of little hints out here over the MDR of something at the very back end of the run, too, closer to Friday the 13th. So Euro and GFS are kind of seeing the same thing. But yeah, so sorry, I've been missing the chat. I see people talking. Let me go back a little bit. It doesn't rain here. You're right up with Ryan Hall. Do you think we'll need to watch Rina? Yes and no. Yes and no, I would say. It's worth watching to see which one becomes the more dominant feature out there. Because if you go to satellite, they're literally right on top of each other. It's very interesting. It's very cool to see, to tell you the truth. I'll pull up infrared real quick. And we'll quickly glaze. Yeah, look at that. As a matter of fact, I didn't intentionally leave my circle there, but just looking at this image right here, you can see that there's almost no discerning between the two systems. They're so close together. Look at that. They look like just one giant system. It looks almost like we have Fujiwara starting to take effect. For a little brief glimpse there, you could kind of see two separate cyclones right at this loop right here, right at this this scan. There's one, and then there's two right there. But then as you go towards the back end of the satellite, they really wash together. And in fact, you know what? It almost does look like Philippe's going to win this fight. Almost looks like Philippe might win the fight. Because we had a little something right there concentrated around future Rina's center right there. It was starting to consolidate. You could really see some symmetry, a little center of circulation right there. And then here's, I don't know why I almost said Franklin. PTSD. Then here's Philippe right here. I have Franklin, Philippe, that's probably why. You go forward in time and you lose that organized center and you start seeing him really strengthening up almost. So maybe Philippe is going to be the one that conquers the two of them during this effect period. Hey, Mr. Hype Man, Florida Man. We're not there yet. That's Friday. We'll hype up on Friday. Wilma was October 20-something. It was a week before Halloween. Yep, I remember that. We also had Hurricane Michael, ironically, right around the same time in October 2018. Very ironic. Again, another little fun fact for you guys watching. Not really weather-related, but not Halloween. Yes. In October 2018, it was a very pivotal year for me as a scary movie fan because we saw the reinvigoration of the Halloween franchise. So I thought it was very crazy that a Cat 5 hurricane named Michael hit Florida, I think like a day or two before Halloween 2018 released. That's very, very symbolic. And please don't take that the wrong way. I'm not saying that that's cool or, something to be excited about. I'm just saying, as a horror fan, I'm tiring more to Halloween Michael Myers, not the Storm Michael. Just, little fun fact. What I do find interesting, though, and I know it's the 18Z, but we'll go down towards the Caribbean. And at 18 Zulu, if you watch, GFS is starting to show indications that our Central American gyre is going to fire up and we're going to see a surge of moisture and thunderstorm activity. Because you go to the back end of the run and look at all that stuff spinning and turning and twirling around there. And what's crazy is even though it's later in the run, this is Friday the 13th again, Notice how it is kind of picking up on something similar to the Canadian model now, albeit much later in the run and in a different spot. Canadian has it exiting here, whereas it looks like GFS wants it exiting somewhere up here into the western Gulf of Mexico. So, yeah, 2 different points in time, 2 different models. 18Z is not necessarily as accurate as our 0 and 12Z. It's not a hot model run, but just, little sliver of something to point out is, down the road, our models are thinking very similar things. One of our forecasters said we are through with hurricane season here in Mobile and Pensacola area. Never rule it out. Never rule it out. That is a very poor thing to say, Gregory. I'm not trying to throw shade. I don't know who it is you're talking about. Don't name any names, but, it's not over until it's over. I mean, look at what's happening with Philippe. Yes, it's not happening there in particular. It's not hitting anybody mainland U.S., but for a while, everyone was, including myself, was saying with a fair bit of confidence that we're done. We have fish storms out there, nothing really to worry about. And then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, things didn't pan out the way they were supposed to, and now Caribbean is going to see an impact. At least, we're getting closer to confidently being able to say they're going to see an impact. So yes and no. That's definitely a toss-up. There's nothing wrong with hyping things up. Joseph, I'm not going to lie to you, buddy. For those of you watching, I'm going to full-on admit it. If we do get something forming in the Caribbean, whether it be, when the Canadian model's indicating it or just down the road, something closer to Friday the 13th, if something does form out there, I'm hyping the living daylights out of it. Like, I'm not going to start being unrealistic with it, but I'm definitely hyping up. Like, we've been talking about this on and off for weeks upon weeks, through September, late end of August. I was mentioning, hypothetically speaking, if we do get something down there again with all these frontal systems, it's going to be a big deal. We're going to have to worry about it, for sure. I meant the path is like Ian, not the intensity. Yeah, no, definitely. I got a lot of rain today. We were getting 2 inches of rain an hour. Wow. Do you think we need to watch Rina? Not necessarily. I think I already answered that question. Path isn't like Ian. Ian was long-term. Well, that too. Yeah, Ian started out over near the Lesser Antilles and really got his act together around the Jamaica area and then kicked up towards Cuba. This one would be forming a lot closer. Trends are your friends. Exactly, Zenfly. 175,000% agree with that. That's what I've been watching. That's why I don't, sometimes it does irk me if I wait too long to voice it, a trend or something I've been observing on a consistent basis. It does irk me a little bit if someone with more coverage and traffic to their channel starts popping off with the information first, because then as a smaller channel, it gives me the impression, or it gives other people the impression that I'm just copying. But that's why sometimes I'm hesitant to blast things out. I'm never one to jump on one model run. I'm never one to jump on one ensemble run. I'm never one to jump on maybe even 2 or 3. I wanted to build momentum. And the only reason it seemed like I jumped on the one run of the Canadian is because I went back in time before making my video and I saw that 012, 012, 0. 3 days beforehand, we had about half a dozen model runs with it still picking up on that same feature. So that's why I said, I'm bringing my case to the table. I'm going up to the platform, and I'm going to say, hey, this is what I've got. Do with it as you please. This is my information. It's up to you what you do from it from there. Let's see. Idalia didn't hit Southwest Florida. No, they didn't. Ian hit Southwest Florida, exactly. Too early to know. I agree. We're still, it's all speculation at the end of the day. We're just building evidence, that's all. I'm compiling a case as to why I'm doing what I'm doing in my videos and what I'm trying to communicate. And for those of you who didn't watch, I'll get on to my little speech here as to why I'm putting a little more energy into this system in particular. 13 is my lucky number. Boss Lady Mama, I like that. Miami will kneel down. That's a little bizarre. Put that number on the lottery for the week. Yes, Friday the 13th. I love Friday the 13th. The franchise, not the bad luck and all that superstition surrounding it. The Cape will go to the north again. Probably, yeah. If we get something out there, it'll probably go north. We have too many frontal systems and, high pressures coming off the coast. I wouldn't be worried about that. What they got on Florida, Cape has been boring. Absolutely. UFC Tropics out there. Yeah, it's like Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. You have that big swath of rain and then the little one that got kind of sucked in. Any threats over the next week or two in the United States? Not as of right now. There's too much inconclusive information with Philippe. That's why the biggest thing we have to emphasize right now is it is headed towards the Caribbean. None of our models are anymore predicting that it's going to go to the north, so we have to start emphasizing that the Caribbean needs to prepare for some level of impacts. Whether it be tropical depression or a weakening post-tropical cyclone, regardless, we have a named system headed that direction. Philippe was not forecast to be the winner. No, it wasn't. But what's interesting is you could see that Rina or disturbance 91L on that satellite image had a little bit of a core starting to form up, and then it washed out as it got closer to Philippe. So the stronger system usually wins, and right now, technically, Philippe is the stronger system, so we'll see. Harp law by design. That's fair. I believe that. Hurricane Tortilla equals Katrina. If Michael hit Fort Myers, it would have been cool because of Michael. I see what you did there. Hurricane Michael in Fort Myers. Michael in the Myers area. Michael, I meant not my, lol, on Friday the 13th. Storms are cool to me, always electric, and I lost everything in Irma. They are exciting. They are, but that's the sad reality. You got to come back and realize that where these storms go, it's exciting to watch it start and unfold, but then afterward, reality smacks you upside the head. I hype all storms. Internally, I do the same thing. You should have seen how many times, I didn't say it. I didn't have my YouTube channel yet, but there were so many times back in June where the GFS randomly had like a Cat 5 headed towards Florida, and everybody in my family and friends were like, I'd come up to them and be like, we're getting a Cat 5 in June. I'd start hyping up, and, again, I wasn't on YouTube, so I just had fun with it back then. Why does Tampa get avoided by hurricanes? You're just kind of in the sweet spot. I know that sounds silly or corny, but some people, they have superstition behind it. There's an old, I forget what it is specifically. I'll have to look it up, but I know that there's an old saying that there's a blanket of protection in the supernatural realm. Like I said, it's just a myth. I'm not, putting emphasis on that. I truly think it's because it sticks out like a sore thumb along the west coast of Florida, and you're either going to get something into the panhandle, due north, it's easiest path for most storms to take, or unfortunately, you're going to get clipped in the south because they're curving already by the time they come up from the south. There it is. Thank you, Carmen. Tocobaga tribe. There we go. I didn't want to say anything else. Native Americans bless the... Okay, so yeah, I was on the right track. I just didn't want to be politically incorrect. Let's see. What do we got in here? Tiffany's content for sure. Start looking at ensembles first. Yes, Tiffany, I still got to get you in here. I haven't forgotten. Tonight and today has been just madness. I had to do another very low-tempo video and just blast it out because I've been so busy with homework and work and other things. So forgive me, hon. I got to get back to you and get you in here. Florida is safe. Right now, there's nothing conclusive, so right now I'd say yeah. I would say yeah. Harrison, hi. I don't believe in that, Carmen. Wilhelm Red, I hyped Idalia to become a Cat 5. Hyping it up. Maybe if you conjure enough hype, it'll, the one thing... No, never mind. I'm not going to go into that just yet. Florida had a tornado warning yesterday. Did you see? I did see that. Yeah, there was some tornadic activity here in Florida. People say that Seminole tribe blessed the Tampa Bay region. I don't know, though. It's possible. I definitely think it's more geographical why you guys tend to miss storms, because by the time a system gets into that area of, just the general geographic region, it's either already moving northeast or it's just headed due north. And because of your position, climatologically speaking, most of the time a system's going to be driven either north and past your location or just to the south of your location. It happens like clockwork. When Ian was predicting to hit Tampa Bay, it felt so unreal putting up hurricane shutters, and it shifted 60 miles to the south. Yeah, me either, lol. I Googled the word. I was almost going to do that too, reach for my phone and do that real quick. But, whatchamacallit, I said my friend will get hit by Irma replacement, and it seemed like I was right. Oh, Lord, okay. I see what you're saying there. But, anyways, guys, before we get ready to wrap up, because we don't really have a whole lot to cover outside of the you know what? Let me go on to CPC's website, and I'll start pulling up their discussions, see if there's any talk on their website as to why they're putting what they're putting out there. Let's see. Here we go. So... there it is. Their first sentence is, Madden-Julian oscillation has returned to the unit circled in a path with diametrical model for it may be largely incoherent regarding its significant implication or use for propagation of the intraseasonal signal. However, the upper-level velocity potential field indicates a more organized wave 1 asymmetry structure in its spatial pattern. Enhanced upper-level divergence is noted over the Indian Ocean, blah, 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 blah. I want to get to the Atlantic. Here we go. The Atlantic basin has been active over the past week with 2 tropical cyclones formations. Tropical storm Ophelia, blah, blah, blah. Hurricane center indicating high chance of additional tropical storm forming. Tropical cyclone forming over this week. Contrast, the Eastern Pacific has been quiet despite the ongoing El Nino with no new tropical formations. Given the favorable upper level conditions forecast during the next week, a ramp up in tropical cyclone activity is predicted for the western. Damn it. Where's the Atlantic? I'm just going to do a control F real quick. Across the rest of the Atlantic, the MDR is forecast to quiet down, although additional tropical cyclone development cannot be ruled out given the anomalously warm sea surface temps. Everybody's been talking about that. Close to the U.S. East Coast, both the GFS and Euro ensembles depict surface low pressure underneath the surface high of the Northeast during week 2, similar to Tropical Storm Ophelia. Given the persistence of this pattern and the elevated potential for such system to require tropical subtropical along the Gulf Stream, a 20% chance of blah, 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 blah. So where is the portion about Caribbean? I don't see anything about the Caribbean. Let me do another control F real quick. Forgive me if you're typing in the chat. I'm not, here we go. The 20% chance regions also extend into the Western Caribbean during weeks 2 and 3, consistent with the increase in climatology in this area during October. Okay, so it's not necessarily MJO related, although I do believe our MJO oscillation is going to try to move back into position here very soon. I've seen it on a few different charts and other videos. Yeah, so right about very beginning of October into the first week and then forward on, we go into a neutral phase. And then as they mentioned, it's a little bit more weakened, or I should say it's a little more disorganized. It's not as potent of an oscillation or an oscillating pattern. But we're still going to go into that favorable environment throughout the month of October, right over parts of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. So I bet that's also what they're looking at. Let's see. Do you think Southwest Florida could get hit by a hurricane in October? It really depends on what shakes out in the Caribbean, because truthfully, I'm going to tell you right now, if something does end up forming first week of October, we're going to have to watch very closely, because with everything happening over the United States, every new frontal system and trough that's coming across, it's a very likely situation that it'll be driven north and northeast. So that's what I've been talking about for, I think, about almost upwards of a month now, maybe a little over a month, is as we transition through September and get into fall and we start seeing more frontal systems and troughs coming through, the chance of something forming to our south and going straight into Florida or at least the Gulf Coast goes up tremendously. Charlie decimated us on the west coast of Florida. Yes, it did. Charlie was wild. And are you real with the stuff you're saying, though? I appreciate that, Ethan. Is it going to die from the mountains, or would it go back into the sea and intensify? Which storm? Are you talking about Philippe? Hey, Nazario, what do you think the risks are for Southeast Florida, Miami with these two systems in the Atlantic? Very low. Digital dentistry, very low. I wouldn't be too concerned about Florida right now. My main focus with Philippe and or 91L is going to be the Caribbean. Lesser Antilles, Leeward Islands in particular. Here comes Willow to photobomb the the live stream here in a second. And Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, for sure. That'd be my first initial threat assessment, if you will. What we'll really need to watch is if anything does get cooking in the Caribbean, because if it does, with the pattern that's setting up over the United States, that's going to get dangerous for us. And I know dangerous is technically a hype term, but I'm saying it anyways, because if something does form, it's going to have a greater chance of moving to the north. And I'll show you right now why. See, all across the United States, because we're in that time of the year, we're just going to get frontal system and deep trough after deep trough. And right now I'm just blazing through what the jet is doing, because as we know with Lee and Nigel, for example, it was the troughs along the East Coast that scooped it up and kept it away from us. And that's exactly why we saw those storms hook up and move away. Now, let's say, for instance, the Canadian model or CPC or somebody out there is right and we get something down here. With each trough axis coming across the Pacific and over North America, those systems are going to have a greater chance of getting sucked north, just like we've been seeing with our out in the Atlantic systems. So that's the number 2 reason, I will say, why I'm putting so much focus on what the Canadian model's putting out. My number 1 reason, excuse me, 1 second, I need to get my water bottle. All right, I apologize. I didn't even find my water bottle. I must have misplaced that as well. But which one are the troughs on the map, and which one are the troughs? Okay, before I go into my spiel, I'll explain. So a trough, in the true definition of the word, is a lowering, or I guess you could say, like, think of it like ocean waves. You have the crests, and then you have the troughs, or the lowering. You got the difference in the wavelengths. You have the highest point and the lowest point in ocean waves or water waves. And the lowest point would be considered where the water troughs. And then at the top, where it crests and you get the uppermost portion of the wave height, that would be considered, in atmospheric terminology, the ridge. So if you look at what I have pulled up here, everywhere you see these lowering, or this lowering in the wind speeds, that would be a trough. Then now here we have a weak ridge going back up. And then like a roller coaster ride, you have that trough or that drop. So out here over Western Conus, we have that trough here. And then we got to go up again on the roller coaster into the ridge. And then we dive back down with that trough out along the East Coast, and so on and so forth. So yeah. I hope that answered your question. There's a lot more thermodynamically that goes on with it. Troughs, the basic information with them is troughs usually indicate cold weather and bad weather. Ridges typically indicate warmer temps and, believe it or not, more benign weather, or a lack thereof of significant weather. Wilma was a prime example of a hurricane being picked up at the Yucatan and Exactly, Robert. Perfect example, because Wilma was headed west-northwest and went into the Yucatan, and then as the trough came down, it was literally slingshot, took a hard right turn, almost a 90-degree angle, and went right into South Florida. So that's an excellent example right there. Even Franklin earlier in the year didn't hit really anybody outside of the Caribbean islands. Dominican Republic took a pretty good blow from it, but that was another one that was headed due west, stopped, and then just shot north because it got picked up by a trough axis. I like the way you tell the weather, Gregory. I appreciate that. Thank you. I rewatched your old videos of when you were talking about Idalia like a week before, and it's looking all too familiar here. I'm very glad that somebody's referencing my old videos, and that's the number 3 reason I'm going back. Well, I guess number 3 and number 1 kind of coincide with one another. My third biggest thing is kind of going off of what you're saying, PEXT or PET, or however you say that name. I'm sorry, PEXTT. Reason number 3 why I'm putting a lot of energy into this goes perfectly with number 1. Number 3 is pattern recognition. Mr. Castle, Shane Castle, was in here Monday night for our Tropics talk, and he was the one who, during my early upbringings in synoptic meteorology, always mentioned that as you get more accustomed to looking at the big picture weather pattern, you begin to develop pattern recognition. You can see similarities, and it helps with your overall forecasting process, because when you can recognize kind of similarities, you never see the same thing twice, but when you can recognize those similarities and they're fairly close to one another, you get that recognition pattern, for lack of a better term, and you kind of know immediately, okay, this is what's going to happen. So that's like my number 3 reason why I'm really focusing on that, because it's looking all too familiar. My number 1 reason I'm so adamant about, I guess you can say, hyping it up. Yes, we're hyping up, but the main reason I'm hyping is because the Canadian model was the one predicting Idalia over a week in advance, just like it's doing right now. The Canadian model was very aggressive in its pinpointing a Florida landfall, whether it was the Panhandle or Central Florida. It was adamant about that. And the Canadian model, I know some people are in my comments on other videos mentioning me pointing out the Canadian model, and they immediately discredit it. Oh, it's garbage. It's just hype. It doesn't know anything. The Canadian model did, I would argue, the very best with Idalia's initial development and its overall track in terms of its ensemble members. And the reason I'm putting so much energy into this scenario, albeit just hypothetical because it hasn't done anything and hasn't happened yet, the number 1 reason is the Canadian model did the very best with the one major storm that just so happened to make a U.S. landfall this year. Mic drop. That's it. Idalia was the strongest storm to hit the United States in a very populated area, the Southeast. And the Canadian model was the one trying to holler at us that you got to watch. And it wasn't until the Euro started to show maybe a run or two that people started talking about it. But the Canadian model was on board days before the Euro and the GFS. The GFS was the last one to get on board. So that's why I'm putting a little more heart into this, because the one system that actually did affect a lot of people, particularly the United States, as a major hurricane was Idalia, and the Canadian model was sharp, was good with that. That's my number one reason why, regardless of the hype and the people commenting saying I'm fear-mongering, I look back historically last month, and the Canadian model was the one model I fixated on before Idalia took shape. And PEXTT, as you mentioned, you went back to my old videos and you saw that we're looking at the same thing. And the only reason my alarms up here are going off is because that was the one storm that did make a significant impact. It was the one that everybody was like, oh shoot, this is coming at us. Whereas everything else, I know Lee was the Cat 5 and Lee was the big thing. Lee just wouldn't get out of our hair, but forgive me for saying this, I'm not downplaying it, but Lee really didn't do too much. He really didn't. I mean, when he got up north, he was a remnant system, and yeah, he still blew and he still rained, but Idalia was the major hurricane of the year so far, the eye storm, and you know who did the best? It was the CMC. And because of the fact that that was our one landfall for the year, and the Canadian model was the first one to pick up on that, that's why I'm really shifting gears. I don't really care what's out there right now. Right now, I mean, yeah, Philippe going towards the Caribbean is a primary threat. It's right there. It's alive. But seeing this, it's like we gotta talk about it, because people were in the path of Idalia, and that was the one major hurricane to do something this year, for lack of a better term. Because everybody else is saying that this year's been a bust because we only had one hurricane hit. Well, the one hurricane that hit was predicted like this, and no one's talking about it. So I'm going to talk about it. It was a gyre for Idalia. Is CMC showing it? It is, actually. That's another little fun fact that I pointed out in one of my video, or not my one, but the video earlier today. Very cool that you can actually see it. So we go to the Canadian model, and there's our, as a matter of fact, here's the beginning of October. Look at that big old anti-cyclone and all the difluent flow we have pretty much everywhere across Central America. Little fun fact, educational tidbit for you guys. When you're this high in the atmosphere, up to the jet level, like 200-300 millibars, we're talking 20, 30, some odd thousand feet in the air. When you see clockwise spinning and these little arrows going away from each other, that's what we call difluence, or the spreading of the air. It's the air literally getting spread out by upper-level wind flow. And that's cool to talk about, but what we as forecasters identify with anticyclones aloft is that means down at the surface we have lowering pressure, we have upward vertical motion, we have rising. So where there's anticyclones at the upper levels of the atmosphere, typically there's bad weather below that. And I noticed, which was really cool while I was filming my video earlier today, I took a quick glance. You go to 850 millibars right about the same time, and you go forward and look at that. You can kind of see the gyre trying to take shape. You really can. It's a little hard to see because we have so many little wind barbs on here, and you have that storm trying to form. But if you look closely, we have easterly winds across the Gulf, and then as we get over the Central American, Mexican area, or the Mexico area, the landmass, they come south, and then they wrap back around, and they come up the backside of that storm. But then get this, as you come up through the Caribbean, it's also rotating around like so. So we have a giant area of lower pressure spinning out there, and you can see it as that storm starts to develop. You get an even greater indication of it. Even earlier on, before that storm gets to take shape, you can already see that there's mid-level winds at 850 millibars spinning around right in through here, that general area. So it's trying to spin something up out there, and that's why I'm kind of more or less on board with maybe seeing something get spat out anywhere through this general area. If it happens over where the Yucatan is and you have all that additional landmass, we probably won't get anything from it. It won't make it. If it comes anywhere between Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, like Idalia did, we could definitely see some formation there. Like the GFS ensembles and the Euro ensembles are pointing out, if we get something into the Bay of Campeche, into the Gulf of Mexico here, we could definitely see something form up there. That'd probably be more of a threat for Louisiana moving through Mississippi, Alabama. So that's going to be the big determinant as well. If we see formation in either of these source regions, it's going to change landfall entirely. If it goes west and forms west, just like we were talking about with Idalia, it's going to definitely be more of a hazard for these areas. And I'll switch my pen so you guys can see. And if it forms down there in the Caribbean, like the CMC is indicating, it's going to be a bigger threat for these areas. And even out here, the ensembles are thinking Cuba and the Bahamas could take a hit from it too. It might miss Florida altogether. That's how sharp of an eastward movement it'll take. So it definitely has my attention. I'm not taken away from all the other bigger weather players in terms of YouTube channels, actual degreed meteorologists. I'm not taken away from what they're saying and that you guys got to listen to me. I'm not doing that at all. It's just going off of the history we have this year by itself. That's why this is raising alarms for me, because right now there really isn't anything too crazy to worry about. And everyone continues to talk about Philippe and 91 and what could happen off the East Coast. And I agree. Like, Philippe is an imminent threat, absolutely. But when you start seeing something like this that has the potential to landfall multiple populated areas, maybe even the United States, that's why I fixate on it. And we already have a proven track record this year. So should we be worried in the Cayman Islands? As of right now, not necessarily. If we do start seeing more consistency in our models and we get closer to game time, I want to say when we get into the beginning of October, this weekend, when we roll into October 1st and we change our calendars, we'll have a much better idea if you guys in the Cayman Islands need to be worried. Because right now, that whole general area, before we wrap up the stream, I'll just kind of highlight it in a totally different color. I'll go green. This whole area is under my microscope right now. Is it the sinking jet stream that would be responsible for kicking the two systems away from the East Coast? For the ones out in the Atlantic right now, technically, yeah, that has a part of it, or that plays a role in it. But you also have high pressure and cold air coming off the coast that's going to help to bounce them out as well. Unless they stay fairly weak, they could get drawn a little further into the Caribbean or closer to the Bahamas. But yeah, right now that whole area is under my microscope. That's the first thing I look at. Like, and that's another thing too. When it comes to forecasting, that's the name of the game. This would be forecasting. It hasn't happened yet. It's not taking shape. I'm trying to forecast to the best of my ability using run-to-run consistency, how the models have performed, and pattern recognition. That's genuinely what I'm trying to do. So if I bust, I bust. At least I'm forecasting. I'm going on a rant right now, but I'm trying not to sound hostile, but I'm not like some people who are just good at mentioning things when it's already there. Like, at that point, why even mention it? Let other people who are paid to do that tell you what's already there. I'm trying to forecast right now, so that's why I don't care if people call it hype or people say you were wrong. I'm doing my best. I'm forecasting with what I got right now, because if something does pop up right there, we're not going to have time to get ahead of it like our Atlantic systems. The Atlantic systems, we've had like a week or 2 weeks before they've come close to play a role. If something gets going in the Gulf, let alone the Caribbean, we have people right in harm's way, like the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Cuba, and then we got Florida and the Gulf Coast, so we're not going to have time to get ahead of it. So right now is our best chance at forecasting it to start letting people know if they need to get ready or not. Because we just had that tropical wave go through, and they had tremendous raining, bad flooding, bad landslides all through that region, and that was just a tropical wave. What can I expect from Philippe and St. Kitts and Nevis? Should we be concerned? Not overly concerned. It's really going to depend on what happens over the next 24 hours, in my opinion. He's really slowing down, and we're starting to see 91L really catch up with it. So now it's going to be a game of which system's going to win, which system's going to further organize, and which one's going to get ripped apart. Right now, one thing is for certain, as it moves closer and closer, definitely prepare for heavy rain. Heavy rain is going to be one of the biggest things with this system. Depending on if it holds together, we can start talking about storm surge and flooding. No, excuse me, not flooding, wind damage. But heavy rainfall and potential localized flooding is already a big thing. Even if it comes in as a tropical depression, with the potent thunderstorm activity that it's had with it, albeit disorganized, those are going to be my main threats, just like with Ophelia. Everyone was talking winds and storm surge, and yeah, there was some storm surge, but a lot more of it was the inland rain threat for more people anyways. But yeah, guys, that'll just about do it for tonight. Tropics Talk, it's 8:54. We're going to start wrapping up. get ready to call it. I'm pretty exhausted, so forgive me. I love talking to everybody. We have over 100 viewers in here tonight, which is great. Thank you so much for joining in, but I'm going to get ready to call it a day. Were there any other pressing questions? You live in Florida, right? Yes, I do. Central Florida. But if there are no other pressing questions, guys, we'll go ahead and give it a go. Well, I don't know. Sleepy brain, forgive me. But yeah, that's my biggest area of concern right there. And the only reason I'm doing whatever you want to call it is because we already have previous history tell us that something could possibly pop off out there. So if there aren't any further questions, I agree, Robert. Hell yeah. Read my mind. Boss Lady Mama, yes, you will see me tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow I can pump out a little bit better of a video, spend a little more time editing, but I did see a couple comments today that some folks actually appreciate me just kind of jumping in. No fancy editing, just let's talk. So maybe I will continue this steady string of videos until I can sit down and really just, make something both informative and a little entertaining on the editing side. So that water temp is still way high, right? Heck yeah. That's the one area that hasn't been touched by a whole bunch of tropical systems. So we have a lot of good OHC, good sea surface temps. That one wave you were talking about yesterday didn't happen, low-key. I was getting hyped. Yeah, I know. I had a gut feeling it wasn't going to be anything because of where it was sitting. It was sandwiched in between something that could save its life and something that would destroy it, and the things that could destroy it definitely won. But we definitely saw a lot of impacts from it. Here in Florida, in the Caribbean, we saw a lot of impacts from it. A few people mentioned that there were some tropical storm level winds in some of those thunderstorms too. So it's not like nothing happened. It definitely happened. So a hurricane, I don't know why I almost had an aneurysm. A hurricane, possibly. Yeah, this weekend for October 1st, I'm looking at you guys over here. You guys can't see them, but I want to do something spooky to ring in spooky season. Nothing crazy, but, I'm going to do something fun, creative. Because you know what they say, if you're on social media and you're not doing something fun, if you're not having fun, then what the heck is the point? So, albeit I know that we got to keep focused, we got to be serious, but at the same time, got to take a sigh of relief too. So if I can make you guys laugh and have fun, then hell yeah, I'm going to step into the spooky realm with you. Have a good night. It is so cool how you keep it real when you talk. I also like the update videos you do. Looking forward to more content. Ethan, I appreciate you. Looking out for you. I'll definitely remember you. Caribbean and Gulf water temperatures still record high. I wouldn't say record high. At this point now, we've kind of evened out. I think it's like maybe 1 degree, 2 degrees warmer in some areas, but at this point in the season, this is right about when things should have been heating up. Where we saw record temps is more so when it wasn't supposed to be this hot. Most handsome weatherman so far, Shania. Ooh. All right, well, Shania, I thank you very much. I appreciate that. I try. I definitely try. I got to keep up. I got to get in the gym first thing tomorrow morning once again, and that comment's going to motivate me that much more. Zenful, good night. Shania Wild for that. When's the next CNC run come out? Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be awake for it. I fought to stay awake from it yesterday, or stay awake for it yesterday, but full run of the Canadian model won't be in until about like midnight, 12:30 a.m., and I got to be up at 4 to go hit the weights before the workday starts, so I'm not trying to get 3 hours of sleep. I love you guys. I love weather, and but, a man's got to rest. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to pump this content out for you guys. Jetstream can actually push the system north towards Florida. I agree. Yeah, exactly. That's why... some people can say it's hype, but if we do get something, it doesn't have to be right now. If we do get something in general, it's just a better chance that we'll have something coming towards us because of how aggressive the jet stream is. Watching you now instead of my local weatherman. Gregory, thank you very much. That means a lot. Lord willing, I can get up to that point and I can be the local weatherman for an area in Florida. And yes, I actually pointed that out earlier. Elite Chief Stark, exactly. It is 1 year as of today now. I think it was 3:10 in the afternoon. Hurricane Ian made landfall. Kaya Costa, I think. I'm just going to say Fort Myers. Kaya something out there in southwest Florida. Spending my birthday at Universal tomorrow. I'll catch up things after that, but it's been a great stream. Thanks again. Elite Chief Stark, happy birthday, brother. How old? How you got to throw it? Well, maybe not. Let's not get that personal. I was gonna say how old, so we can wish you a happy. But everybody, happy birthday. If you're still in the chat, everyone, please wish him a happy birthday. Thank you so much for tuning in. And have fun at Universal. Lord willing, you can dodge all the bad weather out there. It looks like rain chances are really not going to be changing too much. But if you get out there early enough, you should be good to go, because we didn't get any bad weather here until almost 5-6 o'clock, and then it really started coming down just before the stream. So I think if you get out there early enough, you'll be just fine. Nothing has really tampered with Caribbean waters, which are really warm, so things might explode. It can. It definitely can. That's for sure. It definitely can. We have a couple other variables out there that could play a role too. I mean, we have wind shear, and with every new trough and cold front, there could be dry air with it as well. So that, there's a lot of moving pieces. We're at a very volatile point in the hurricane season, because it becomes more of, we got to look at A, B, C, D, E, F, G as opposed to A, B, C steering these systems and affecting them. Earlier in the season, we had nothing to worry about because dry air shear. Then middle parts of the season, we had high pressure trough. Now we have high pressure front, trough, shear, gyre, Fujiwara. Like, we have so many different things out there. So it's getting wild. It's definitely having my brain, and I'm sure every other forecaster, especially at NHC, has their brain getting ready to ooze out of their ears too, looking at all this stuff. Big thanks to everybody shouting out Elite Chief Stark with the happy birthday. Definitely appreciate you guys. Can definitely help out with that, celebrating. We're sending all the positive energy your way. Do you cover severe weather events, not just tropical? Absolutely, yeah. No, I definitely want to start shifting gears. I definitely do. If I want to make this a year-round channel, I have to start getting away from tropics, because eventually this is going to all come to an end, and I swear I'm not going to continue mentioning, we got nothing in the Atlantic today, guys. We're going to do a tropics talk tonight. We got nothing. No. We're going to shift gears. I actually have a pretty cunning way to transition with that as well as we get into the winter time. This will no longer be tropics talk. I forget what I call it. I have it written down on my phone, but I've been storyboarding a couple new live streams that we could do together, and it won't be called tropics talk. It'll be something different. Hurricane Ian was a difficult event to live through. Pine Island strong. God bless everyone that has experienced natural disasters. Amen, I say to that, Carmen. GFS models and Tampa News weather keeps saying Rina will form in the Gulf. What the? Are you serious? What? That kind of frustrates me. That's not, unless they're talking about this beating 91L to the punch and getting a name, but wow, I don't know. I got to look at that. My channel is very new. It really got started, I want to say, I think like first couple days, maybe end of the first week of August, I popped on YouTube, and then I thankfully took off when Idalia came up. My first couple of videos discussing the precursors of Idalia is what started to get me recognized, and people started to subscribe, and ever since then, yeah, we've been on a steady upward trend. I praise God for that. I praise God for you guys. Don't forget to like the videos. Yes, please. Thank you, everybody. Please like, share, subscribe. Share this stuff for sure. Definitely get it out there, especially if we start seeing more and more trends leading towards something forming up. People are going to want to know, especially since no one's really talking about it yet. And trust me, I tune in, I watch all my other subscriptions, and I want to see if they're talking about it. I'll even fast forward through timestamps to see if they're going to mention it at all, and no one's talking about it yet. Maybe it's a good thing, because no one needs to be freaking out just yet, because I know with this information, people can start to stress, especially if they were hit by Idalia full force, and that's not what I'm trying to instigate. I'm just mentioning that we need to put it on our radars, and that's it. I'm turning 29. Woo! Not the only old man out there. I'm just kidding. I'm almost 30, but 29. I'm fist bumping you through the camera right now. Fist bump to you. I'll be headed out in the morning from Pasco County. It's a bit of a drive, but yeah, keeping an eye on the storms. Thank you for birthday wishes, y'all. Absolutely. Happy birthday again. Have fun out there. Be safe as you drive, because Florida drivers, you never know. I think my dad recommended me to your channel. Heck yeah, I like that. 29 years young. Amen. Amen. Carmen, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Wow, look who decided to step in just as we were getting ready to call it a night. You popped back in last second. But thank you for all that you do, man. Survived Hurricane Ian here from Cape Coral, Florida. Hurricane Ian was a beast. He was another caliber. 365 years to this day. You know, everybody in here from Florida who felt the wrath of Hurricane Ian, whether it be here in Central Florida or down south, God forbid, taking the full force of that Cat 4, borderline Cat 5, you know, we're all here to tell the tale. And for the people who are ignorant to that stuff in the greater United States, who don't have to deal with hurricanes on a regular basis, let alone at all, I'm sure that they have other weather phenomena that they can talk about, but we can all tell people our story. You know, it's situations like that really make everything that we do on YouTube and all the communication that you guys do offline after watching all this content. That's the name of the game. It's all about communication and just sharing it out there. We're the focal point. We're telling you guys, and as you watch, it's up to you to just spread the word, get it out there. That's how we save lives. Sounds cliche. It sounds very Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt, but it's true. It's all about saving lives and getting ahead of this stuff. It's how we get better at forecasting. It's how we get better at communicating. It's how we develop greater relationships. You look more like 24 than near 30. Thank you. I thought the military aged me like crazy. And usually when I have the fuzz going on, I look even older. It's when I go baby face and I shave, I look maybe 26, 27. Idalia hit top wind speeds of 110 at landfall. I've been hearing that, you know, like back and forth. Some areas observed this and this and that. But at the same time, you got to remember that some of those areas that got hit the hardest were a little bit more data sparse. So we didn't have too many relevant observations where they needed to be. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap there in terms of data. And data sparsity is definitely a real thing. Trust me, doing data sparse or limited data forecasting sucks. Ian was a minimal tropical storm where I am. Idalia was also. Yeah, same here. I was expecting a little bit worse, but since it took so much time to move through the peninsula of Florida, and then it also curved even further to the east and put a lot of us in Central Florida on the weaker side of the storm, it didn't do a whole lot. It definitely flooded everybody, that's for sure, but wind damage and power outages weren't too bad. What's Herbert's box? You know, I've been hearing about that quite a bit, and if I'm not mistaken, it just has something to do with a repetitive basis of where storms tend to form and where they tend to track. That's something I've been meaning to research because I only discovered it this year. But in layman's terms, it's kind of a general area geographically, or I guess you can say a coordinate box, a grid box, where storms tend to form, and they'll typically track in this one general area based on climatology and historical trends with the large-scale weather pattern. Why are I-named storms always the worst? You know, it sounds superstitious, but I think it just has to do with the timing. Most I storms typically happen right at the peak of hurricane season. So somebody, unfortunately, is getting smacked upside the head by a bad storm, and usually between HIJKL, that's right about the time where we start to see more flare-ups and systems are popping off, not only close to home, but also back towards, we're starting to transition from close to far. So you have storms forming close to the U.S. and then out in the Atlantic as well. Herbert Box named after NHC forecaster identifies storms near PR, and if a storm moves over, it has a likely... Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for putting that in. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not super familiar with that. I've only started hearing it as I've stepped into the YouTube realm. So something definitely to research. We'll all do our homework on it. But anyways, this conclusion took up an extra 10 minutes. This is why my videos are so long. I'll start my videos and say, we're going to make it short today, and then it's 20 minutes in. Ida, Ian, Idalia, Irene, Irma, and more. I still believe Cat 5 Ian made landfall. Not trying to be that guy or insensitive. I don't believe NXT wanted to report it due to payouts. You never know. You never know. All I remember is I remember waking up in the middle of the night and I saw from about $1.15, $1.20, it went up to 155 before it made landfall. So, shoot. Thomas Denton, think you're great and thanks for all that you're doing. I live in UK and we've had some strong winds from a couple of your hurricanes that have turned northwest. Mom lives in Florida, so always watching. Thomas, thank you for tuning in. Wow, that's awesome to know you're watching from way over there. And yeah, the few storms that have hooked way out into the United States, way out into the Atlantic, you definitely can expect that they're swinging through your area. And it goes without saying, even though no one really mentions it, I can personally testify and say that's been in the back of my mind too. Because as they swing out there, they still stay fairly strong. And you guys are getting hit by some good winds and rain too. I was hoping Franklin was going to hit New York. Doff Boy, they released a documentary where it reached Cat 5. Yeah, post-season analysis mentioned that it, I think, hit max winds of 163 miles an hour off the coast of Florida. Full-fledged Cat 5. I did see that too. Yeah, I came across a brief little snippet online of Hurricane Agnes hitting Ireland. But anyways, guys, forgive me. Let's go ahead and start wrapping up for sure. Forgive me, but I'm not going to take any more questions. We're already over time. It's 9:09. I'm going to start wrapping up the stream. Thank you all so much for watching tonight. It's always an absolute joy to talk to each and every one of you. You always make collaborations so much fun. And I'm going to continue doing what I do. Going to continue to watch the Caribbean. That's going to be my number one focal point, forecasting it out. I'm going to continue to monitor what Philippe and 91L future potential Rina does as well. And if maybe we get something off the mid-Atlantic coastline again, a la Ophelia. So time will tell. I'm really fixated on the Caribbean, though. Too many things are looking very similar to what we saw with Idalia, and it's worth talking about. So I'm going to continue to hit that hammer as hard as I can, beat a dead horse. But good night, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow for a full segment of Weather Center Nazario. And Friday night, the hype night, Friday night at 8 p.m., we'll do our next iteration of Tropics Talk. I look forward to seeing you all in there so we can hype up right on the cusp of Halloween season. It'll be September 29th. Just about time to roll into October and start blasting the Halloween theme everywhere you go, guys. So we'll see you then for another Tropics Talk. Until then, guys, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.